Have you ever woken up with a stiff neck? This is not an uncommon thing that so many people experience. And on this week's episode of the Exercises Health Podcast, we're going to give you a simple framework that you can follow to help you out if that's ever been the case for you or if it happens again in the future. We're going to cue our introduction and we're going to dive right into this conversation. Hey, welcome back, exercisers, to the Exercise is Health podcast, brought to you by Muscle Activation Schaumburg and Exercise for Life Studios, where we believe that your health is your most valuable asset. And the single best thing that you can do to both boost and protect this asset is exercise. Specifically, exercise is geared towards building the health and function of your muscles. We are your hosts, Charlie
and Julie.
And today we are diving into what do you do if you wake up and have a stiff neck? Okay, in fact, recently I had a client come in who said, hey, you know what? I had a nice night of sleep last night, but I woke up and I think I've pulled something in my neck. Like, it feels achy, it feels sore. It wasn't like a sharp shooting pain that he was experiencing, but he's like, nah, it feels like I strained something while I was sleeping. Like, I pulled a muscle in my neck. So if that's ever been you, I want to lay out kind of how we go about thinking about that situation and give you steps that you can apply to your own life to help you out in case that happens again in the future.
That's right. Charlie, a lot of times whenever we wake up feeling funky, especially stiff in the neck and whatever, we always want to blame like our bed or our pillow. Like, oh, I must be slowly getting towards needing a new mattress, or I'm going to need a new pillow. And every mattress salesperson wants you to also believe that. Mm-hmm. But it kind of takes two to tango here, right? It's not just what's happening in your environment, like your bed at the time or your pillow, but it's also the state of your body that's going onto that bed or the positioning of your body. So a lot of times, especially if you have a great night, and then one random day you wake up and you're stiff and achy in your neck, it's probably not your pillow in your bed because that didn't change, drastically overnight. But what can change pretty quickly overnight is if you sleep in an interesting position, meaning a weird position or an uncommon position, or if the state of your muscles in your body are different going into that night, which we know can change very quickly. Mm-hmm. The state of your pillow does not change very quickly. So we're going to talk mostly about what you can do with your own body to change the state of it now that it's been tweaked in this manner.
Exactly. And so one thing to keep in mind is that the likelihood that you actually injured yourself is relatively low. I'm not going to say it's zero, but it's relatively low because your muscles don't get pulled or don't get strained while you're sleeping. Like, your body's relaxed, okay? But similar to how if you sit in a car or sit on an airplane for an extended period of time and then you get up and you feel like really stiff and achy, all right, if you have positioned yourself unknowingly in a position where you're sleeping for a longer period of time, and you wake up, that can have your neck be stiff and achy. But it doesn't necessarily mean that there's actually a structural injury to, the muscle tissue or to the ligaments or to the fascia or anything like that. It just means that whatever position you're in, your nervous system likely said, no, this really isn't the position for us. But because you are unaware, you are sleeping, you don't get that signal that your nervous system is not liking it until you wake up. And then you're like, okay, wow, I was just in that position for 6, 7, 8 hours, however long. My neck's not feeling that great, okay? So that's kind of the first thing that we need to say is it's a very low likelihood that you actually injured the muscle tissue, okay? And so because of that, because it's far more likely that it's simply a central nervous system communication thing, then there's actually a lot that you can start to do about it. But here's the thing. Oftentimes, the symptoms that you're experiencing, even the pain that you're experiencing, it's likely going to persist at some level until that communication improves. Because again, the communication or the breakdown of communication between your nervous system and your muscles is likely a large contributor to what you're experiencing. So we need to make sure that we're able to reestablish that communication between your brain, between your spinal cord, and your muscles.
Now, Charlie, the way this works is our brain and our spinal cord talks to our muscles, and our muscles have to send communication back. And so when we go into really weird positions, like let's say you fell asleep and your arm, your nose was in your armpit or something. That's just like a weird position. the muscles that are having to tolerate that weird position eventually get stressed out enough that they start struggling to communicate back to your nervous system. And so what your brain says is, oh, well, we're going to call you an inhibited muscle now. So we're not going to communicate with you so much because I'm not getting feedback. How am I supposed to control you if you don't tell me what's going on? And so when that happens, that's your body's natural, normal way to kind of shut muscles down for a temporary good reason, because you're sleeping with your nose in your armpit or however it is, right? But here's the thing, your body will always now try to protect those muscles, saying, hey, the delts are not working right now, your shoulder muscles aren't working, or the side of your neck muscles, we have to shut them down because they're in this really stressful position, and now it's been 6 hours. I don't know why you're not getting out of this position, but it's been 6 hours, we're still stressed out, we're going to shut these ones down because we know we're not getting good communication. Now, what the body does in response is now protect these muscles that aren't working well, compensate for these muscles that aren't working well. Again, a really good temporary fix. But that leaves you waking up feeling like, whoa, something's really tight. And the tightness is there because the inhibition is there, the lack of communication is there. So what Charlie was saying is your body's always going to keep that tight stuff there, that achy stuff there, that stuff that you don't like there, until you start to address the muscles that got shut down while you were sleeping in that funky position.
Exactly. Okay. So what do you go, or how do you go about dealing with this? Okay. We want to give you kind of 4 things to think about, 4 things to consider doing, 3 of which you can do on your own, and the first 2 specifically you can do on your own to kind of get you moving throughout your day and stuff. All right. So the first thing that we recommend you consider doing is just kind of move your head, move your neck, move your shoulders, move your trunk, and start to perceive where it feels more difficult to move. Not necessarily painful to move, but it's like, oh yeah, it's kind of challenging to turn my head to the left here. Or, it's kind of challenging if I bring my chin down towards my sternum. Or it feels kind of challenging if I try to pull my shoulders back, okay? So start to feel where it feels more difficult, more challenging to move, okay? And then what you do is you move towards that. So if it feels more difficult to kind of turn your head to the left, then you practice just kind of turning your head to the left as far as you comfortably can. Again, not to the point where it's painful, but just as far as you comfortably can. And then once you get into that position, then just gently squeeze and contract your muscles and feel yourself like trying to turn more into that position. Again, keeping it in a position that's symptom-free, that you're not experiencing like any significant increase in pain, but just a gentle hold and squeezing of those muscles, a light mind-muscle connection, really focused on that contraction. And that's kind of the first step of this whole process.
Now, what this step does that Charlie just laid out is we're trying to reestablish communication on those muscles that got really stressed out because of your positioning. This is contrary to what our brains want to do, which is, oh, there's tight stuff. Let me take my neck, can't turn to the left. I'm going to smash it to the left. I'm going to use my arms and push it to the left until all those tight compensating muscles, those protector muscles, stop protecting. And then maybe I'll feel better. So 2 things here. It very rarely actually makes you feel better, but it makes you feel like you're doing something.
Yeah.
And second of all, your body will always return tightness to where it was, if not even more, after you try to just remove tightness. Because there was a reason the tightness was there. There was a reason those compensators were there. It was because those muscles got inhibited. There's a different group of muscles that got inhibited. So instead of thinking just push into any range you can't do, meaning, oh, I'm turning my head to the left, it's tight, can't move, there's some pain. Instead of pushing further to the left, we're saying stop right at that border of where you feel like your body is giving you signals of discomfort, and actually squeeze the muscles. Slightly squeeze your neck. You can almost even put your hand on your cheek to give yourself like a tactile thing to push into, because we're trying to reestablish communication of muscles that have been inhibited or are struggling to communicate to the nervous system, because that is what really breaks down the tight tissue, the tissue that's giving you symptoms. So by reestablishing communication, you're going to naturally start getting rid of those stopper muscles, those tight muscles.
Exactly. Okay, so that's step 1. Step 2 now is still going to be very contraction focused, But instead of just going into the position that feels a little bit uncomfortable, or where there is some difficulty moving into, and then focusing on the squeeze, now you're going to kind of move throughout the entire range of motion. So let's go back to the example of turning your head to the left, okay? So step one was turn your head to the left and squeeze. Step two is you're going to go to the right and to the left, kind of back and forth. And the whole time you're going back and forth like that, you're focusing on squeezing your muscles. And what this is doing is it's establishing that contraction for the muscles in different lengths when they are shorter and when they are longer, as well as in their mid-range. So kind of throughout a larger range of motion, you are focused on that contraction as you are moving through that motion. Again, you are using the squeeze, you are using the contraction to drive the motion. You're not moving and trying to have the muscles catch up and then, eventually you start to feel them squeeze. It's the squeeze that drives the motion, but instead of just going into that position that felt more difficult and then holding the squeeze, now you're going to start to move through more range of motion using that squeeze to drive the motion.
Now, this is a really unique concept because when our bodies feel good, how much of movement do we really feel? Not much, unless you're like working, like you're lifting heavy stuff, or you're going into weird positions, or you're at the gym, right? Then you start feeling your body. But when our bodies are feeling good, the way we know they're feeling good is that you don't feel them, right? You don't feel your joints. You don't feel, the spinal nerve, the spinal joints in your neck. You don't feel the muscles really tight because everything's working well. We don't feel it. And so when we do start feeling it, we almost try to feel it more to try to get rid of the feeling, like push into it more, smash into it more. But what we're saying is, hey, let's actually highlight the role of the muscles in supporting your neck and practice doing movements through your neck while also trying to be conscious of the muscles that are squeezing to take us there, to move us there, which again, you probably have never done if you've never approached it in this way. And the goal is always, again, to not feel stuff. So we have to ask you to tune in, get that really good mind-muscle connection and really try to contract as you're twisting, or contract as you're side bending your neck, or contract as you are flexing and tucking your chin and extending and lifting your chin. Whatever motion you're feeling that is limited, when you're doing these motions, we're trying to say, hey, we're not just moving to move. We're not just moving to get mobility. We're moving to encourage contraction. We're moving to reestablish contraction. So this might be a really unique thing for you, or a new thing, and that's totally okay and normal, because we want to also get you back to, I don't feel my body when I wake up, or there's nothing hollering at me. But to get there, we have to re-engage and reconnect these muscles.
Exactly. So that's the first two steps, all right? Step number 3 is going to be to find your local MAT practitioner and get scheduled up with them sooner rather than later, okay? The sooner you can get in to see your MAT practitioner, the less these compensations are going to be settling into your body, and the less time likely it'll take to then address the compensations and address these breakdowns in communication, okay? MAT, the entire purpose of muscle activation techniques is to be able to figure out exactly which muscles are having these breakdowns in communication that is then leading to your body having to tighten up, that is then leading to your body feeling stiff and achy when you wake up in the morning or through any point throughout your day, okay? And then to go and address those muscles and improve that communication directly, all right? So by getting that addressed, a lot of times what we see is when people come in with, a stiff neck, they just woke up that morning and is stiff and achy, it really doesn't take much time at all to not only reestablish the communication, but for those symptoms to calm down. The longer you try to live with it and the longer you try to see if it just kind of resolves on its own, more times than not, the longer it ends up taking from an MAT perspective, because as soon as your body starts to do stuff throughout your day, it is going to immediately start trying to learn how to compensate around the dysfunctional muscles, okay? And it's going to try to make your daily tasks as easy for itself as possible by continuously compensating around those dysfunctional muscles. And the more it does that for, and the longer it does that for, the more time it's going to take to kind of unlearn those compensations, and make sure that the muscles that you're supposed to be using when you're doing your daily activities end up being the ones that your body defaults to. So step 3 is go seek out your local MAT practitioner sooner rather than later.
You know what's so funny, Charlie, is people we've been seeing for years, like years and years. You know, everyone has flare-ups now and again because the whole goal of having a body is to use it, right? That's how you keep it strong. Anyway, so people get flare-ups, and sometimes they'll come in the perfect time, meaning they just flared up their neck. They're like, and they come in, they're like, I'm so sorry about this neck flare-up. I'm like, actually, this is the perfect place for you. You should come in right away. I think sometimes in our head we think like we should let our body calm down before we go get, you know, treatment for something. But when it comes to MAT, any time is a great time, and the sooner the better, because less time for your body to cover up and protect this and hide it from the MAT practitioner. Although we do have some pretty good techniques to find everything we need to find, but it's never, we'd rather you just get back to normal function sooner rather than later. So coming in, getting your scheduled an MAT appointment on the books is always better than waiting and waiting and waiting.
Exactly. All right. Now, step number 4 is going to be start doing strength training for that area that felt a little bit symptomatic. Once everything gets calmed down, once that communication gets reestablished, to help build up the stress tolerance and your body's ability to tolerate stress in that area to kind of decrease the likelihood that it flares up again. Now, here's the thing. A lot of times when people wake up with a stiff neck, there might be something going on with the neck, but a lot of times it ends up being something going on with the shoulders and something going on with their trunk, their spine, their back area, okay? And so making sure that you are doing strength training for all of those areas, okay? I'm not saying that you need to go and lift weights with your neck, but making sure that you are doing strength training for your shoulders, doing strength training for your upper back, which will involve some of your neck muscles, and doing strength training for your trunk overall, that will help to build up the tolerance of not only those areas, but take stress off the neck as well, so that the next time you sleep, either for a longer period than you're used to or in a funnier position than you normally do, it doesn't feel as stressful for your body.
That's right. I think one of the main goals that people forget about with exercise is that the whole goal of exercising and doing regular strength training is to build the tolerance level of your body. That means make your body be able to handle more stuff. More weird sleeping positions. Maybe now you can sleep with your nose in both armpits next time, or
at the same time.
or at the same time. Be able to do more positions sitting in the car, going traveling, being able to get up and off the floor. So the goal not being, to train for a bodybuilding competition, but saying, hey, like when I regularly and strategically stress my system to build its level of stress tolerance, I'm able to do more stuff in my life without flare-ups happening. And so strength training is always going to be a piece that we throw in there, especially as we're thinking, hey, we want to not only address what's going on, but prevent it from happening in the future. We want to think about, hey, we want to do regular strength training. We want to be building the stress tolerance, building the ability for your body to handle stuff, handle movement, handle force, handle positions better and better each and every year and every day.
Exactly. So those are the 4 steps that we recommend people thinking about, that we recommend our clients thinking about. That's how we go about thinking about when we wake up and there's an area of our body that is particularly stiff and achy, especially if it's something like the neck. Again, there are a lot of different areas of the body that can influence the neck, whether it's the shoulders, the upper back, the core, and especially when you've been sleeping, all of those different areas are, possible culprits, all right? So not just focusing on the neck, but making sure you are incorporating, the motion and the squeeze and the holds for all the different areas of your body that we just mentioned. And then making sure that you're getting scheduled up with your MAT specialist to get those areas of your body checked out, and incorporating regular strength training for all of those areas. Again, the MAT and the strength training not only will help to reestablish the communication, but it'll also help to build up your stress tolerance to whatever you're wanting to do in life, so you can keep doing those things for longer throughout your life with fewer issues. So if you're in the Chicagoland area or are willing to travel to the Chicagoland area and would like to experience muscle activation techniques for yourself, that is our specialty here at Muscle Activation Schaumburg. All you have to do to see our availability and get scheduled up is go to www.mat mtschaumburg.com. We have a big green button that says Get Started. You can click that and you can schedule yourself for your initial MAT consultation and assessment. And if you would like guidance on doing strength training for your entire body, but in a way that can be done in under 25 minutes and build your health, strength, and function without leaving you feeling achy, sore, or injured, it's exactly what we help you to do within the Exercise for Life membership. You can get your first 30 days of your membership for free by going to www.exerciseforlifestudios.com. So who do you know that needs to hear this episode? Who do you know that has been waking up with a stiff neck recently or has had it, a long time ago? They're like, I do not want that to happen again because it lasted for 2 weeks, a month, however long. Share this episode with them so they can understand things that they can start doing on their own, as well as how to start incorporating different professionals from an MAT perspective to help them out with what they're experiencing. And while you're online, head on over to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to us and leave us a rating and review. Not only do they help people find our podcast when they're looking for information on exercise, it helps them find our podcast when they're looking for information on health. So if you found value in this conversation today, let us know by leaving us a 5-star rating and review. Well, thanks so much for tuning in. We always appreciate it. Have a fantastic week, and we'll talk with you all next week.
This podcast is for information purposes only. The statements and views on this podcast are not medical advice. This podcast, including Julie and Charlie Gates, disclaim responsibility for any possible adverse effects from the use of information contained herein. Opinions of guests are their own, and this podcast does not endorse or accept responsibility for statements made by guests. This podcast does not make any representations or warranties about guest qualifications or credibility. This podcast may contain paid endorsements or advertisements for products or services. Individuals on this podcast may have a direct or indirect financial interest in products or services referred to herein. If you think you have a medical issue, consult a licensed physician.